Mm-hmm. Yes. Hi, my name is Thierry Alexandre, and I'm a performance artist, painter, and costume designer and maker, and all sorts of other things related to creativity. I'm also a spiritual healer and a spiritual counselor, and I was born in France, and I came to the United Kingdom 20 years ago to find um, love, essentially. And it's been quite an amazing journey of self discovery and growth. Um, I arrived here when I was 18, and I initially was running private members clubs and five-star hotels, and had a quite a sort of traditional lifestyle, I suppose, and gradually moved into um, personal research and personal development and the arts over the following years.
Okay. And if I asked you to describe yourself in a few words, how would you do
that? Defiant, survivor, angry, loving, caring, and creative.
Lovely. So, in there's quite a sense of struggle, battle. You say survivor, angry, battle or struggle? What would be the best?
Well, both. I mean, life is a struggle for most people, but I suppose not everyone engages with it as a battle, which it should be, really. There's a lot that we need to overcome as adults, emotionally, psychologically, and I made a decision when I had a nervous breakdown about 15 years ago that I would get to the bottom of what it is about me which is in so much pain, and what is the meaning of life, and what is the struggle, and what is the battle that I want to fight, and what do I want to say with that process.
So what kind of, could you give me some of the challenges then that you faced, that you call a struggle? What have you had to battle with?
As a non-conforming and genderqueer individual, the reception one gets in life and in wider society isn't a terribly welcoming one still in this day and age. Things have improved, and they've certainly improved for me personally, because I have garnered amazing support and have also developed and gained a degree of self-confidence within my expression of being different. But the day-to-day reality of someone who refuses to confine and to be in the mold that society has placed itself in suffers. There's suffering because there's rejection, and as human beings we like to be accepted and celebrated, feel included. But a sense of difference that also goes back to very early childhood, And in a way, it seems like it's a never-ending battle to find a way between self-acceptance, acceptance from the world, and also fulfillment and development, and remaining true to who we are.
So you define yourself as genderqueer?
Mm-hmm.
So how long have you known, how long have you defined yourself that way, and
Well,
what was the process for that?
yeah. I mean, I remember as a little kid, my fascination was incredibly beautiful women, and I surrounded myself with incredibly beautiful women in France. And later in time, I realized that perhaps a part of me wanted to be an incredibly beautiful woman. And then I experimented. I came to this country and played around with costume and drag initially, kind of quite extreme drag transformation makeup, which included, faces like painted over in white with enormous makeups and huge eyelashes and great big headdresses and huge platform shoes, because it felt like that was a kind of defense and a kind of armor also. Although I was doing it in in contexts of LGBT scenes or clubs, or where people would accept me, but it was also there was a very sensitized aspect of myself which needed to feel, I suppose, superior and detached from everyone else to be able to express myself. So through that, I realized, wow, when I'm doing these amazing costumes and becoming this other persona, I can express myself so much more easily. It seemed that my sense of humor was greater, my ability to laugh and to dance and to explore and to entertain and to enjoy was, exploding completely when I was, in costume and in full makeup. So that actually made me realize that the outcome of that, well, the meaning of that was that in everyday life I was unable to be those things, which pushed me to explore more about what are the factors that are withholding my true nature in a day-to-day life. And I started quite a deep process of personal research and understanding, doing psychotherapy, doing retreats, spiritual development, art therapy, all sorts of manners to explore and understand what it was about me that didn't allow me to be fully and to engage with life completely. And after years and years of that type of research, well, I realized that I wasn't happy as a boy, which made complete sense because that went back to my childhood and to my refusal of wearing boys' clothes but still being forced to do so. And, there was a part of me that still wanted to please my parents, although I was a fully grown adult. I hadn't actually broken out of what seemed acceptable for them. And that I didn't want to conform. I had no interest in either being a full woman or being a full man in terms of what people see or what experience I have of life, because that was just too too limiting, really, to think in terms of one or the other.
Mm. And so, if we connect that to the queer retreat you were talking about, what are then some of the main challenges for that community? It's about identity and fit in a mold, as you say. You would say that, so you're not isolated.
I am no longer isolated, but it's been a very lonely journey. Coming to this country to find. I come from a small village in France, and arriving here was pretty much a case of where to go, what to do, and the scene which is immediately available to us is what is classified as the gay scene, which offers bars, clubs, saunas, and other than that, fairly limited social context. And I didn't fit into that, and it was a great disappointment, because I'd spent my childhood and teenagehood waiting to meet the gays and to be, part of a community. And I arrived here and I realized that I wasn't part of a community, because it was a community which indulged heavily into alcohol and drugs and sexual practices, which I experimented with but didn't bring me fulfillment. And also, I was never interested in designer clothes. I was never interested in, David Beckham's haircut, which was all the rage with the gays when I was on the scene. I was doing my own thing, and that meant that I wasn't seen as part of the pack in a way, and didn't have a place.
So would you say that you experienced discrimination within the community?
Absolutely.
Would that manifest itself quite clearly, or was it just your feeling? Were people?
Well, no. Especially in terms of sexual preferences, I couldn't get any partners because I wouldn't conform to what is seen as appealing on the gay scene, and that's usually extremely masculine, macho behaviors, or completely the opposite. The phenomenon of twinks and guys wearing designer, and I was none of those things. So no one was really paying attention to me or being interested, and there wasn't like a seriously active rejection from them. There was just this sense of not one of us, not someone that we can identify with. And there is a lot of shame, unfortunately, ingrained still in gay men and women. Because we are born different, and we are immediately exposed to a very binary world of man loves woman, woman loves man, man and woman marry. Things are slowly changing, but we're talking about centuries of historical heteronormative, information thrown at you. And that's got a huge weight. And when you wake up to the world and you realize, oh, actually, this isn't who I am. This doesn't correspond to what I aspire or what I feel deep in my heart. So, no role models really, or very few. No ability or desire to share one's true feelings with parents or relatives, or not even knowing whether we can trust friends to do so because of the bullying that comes out of being gay in a school environment, for instance, and the lack of education again, and the lack of support from the education system still to gay people to this day. And then I discovered the radical fairies and realized that there was a European movement called the Euro fairies who gathered at the time in various places across Europe. And I went to one of these gatherings, and I remember coming back after a couple of weeks in Berlin, having been totally immersed in a group of non-conforming, extraordinary individuals, and coming back feeling like I finally belonged somewhere, and that there was a place for me, and that there were other people like me, which I'd stopped believing, because it's such a vast world, and it's so easy to get a little bit lost in it. Finding, our true brothers and sisters is a serious game of cat and mouse. But once I did, I certainly found much greater strength and belief in myself, and I used the support from that specific group to explore even further and find, even find out even more about who I am and how to express that in the world.
So, can you tell me a little bit more about what they do then, and about this retreat?
Yeah. So the radical fairies and the Euro fairies have a kind of European headquarter now, which is based in France, and the gatherings are focused around practice called the Heart Circle, where everyone gets the opportunity to express things that matter to them on that specific day, and they will not get interrupted, and it's an opportunity for people to express some of the difficulties and some of the challenges and some of the pain that living as an outsider brings. So that's a very profound practice, which also creates a bond between people, because there's a bond of trust as well, that the content of what is expressed in this heart circles doesn't come out of those circles. So it's an outlet for people who've never had an opportunity to, because we don't get a lot of opportunities in the world generally, not just as queers, but as human beings, to express our emotions. A lot of it has to be suppressed or just held down or contained, because we live in a world which doesn't encourage people to feeling deeply. And unfortunately, when there is a history of repression in one's life, it becomes very difficult to have a positive emotional landscape, and so groups and therapy both enabled me to push some of that out and create clarity with this. The other thing the fairies do is reconnect with nature and natural cycles, so they will base a lot of their understanding of life and the world in pagan practices and beliefs, but it's also totally open to people but basically exploring spirituality in whatever way, in whatever way is involved, but also exploring, in practical terms. There's like an enormous wardrobe, kind of costume section, and people are free or encouraged to try things out, to play around with gender, to, see, well, what does it feel like? Like I've lived my whole life as a boy, but I'm in a completely safe, understanding group of, eccentrics right now. Here is my chance to put a dress on and see what it's like to have a spin in the kitchen with this massive frock, and to get, to receive the attention and to feel positive about who I am, or the ways that I can express myself. So, that's another very positive and helpful aspect. And of course, reconnecting with nature and with our truer essence is a very big part of it as well. So, the gatherings usually happen in fantastic nature locations. Some of them are here in the north of England. Some of them are happening in France. They're starting to be things towards Spain. It's quite a global movement, but there's always this emphasis on honoring ourselves and honoring nature, which is where we come from, and which we have become so disconnected from, unfortunately.
So back to the heart circle you were talking about. I mean, of course, it's private information, but were you shocked by any of the things that you were hearing? And what kind of, I mean, were people experiencing discrimination, violence on a daily basis? Was there a difference with the way people are treated in France or treated in England, do you think?
I suppose the kind of discrimination that one experiences as a non-conforming individual, for me, has included having bottles thrown at me, being sworn at, shouted at, threatened. I have been beaten up and strangled several times. I've been slapped. I've been punched, and this is something which unfortunately is a reality still today for people who refuse to who refuse to give in, for people whose spirit is telling them shine, for people who have tried to suppress their true nature and have suffered immensely as a result. The daily either rejection or abuse that comes out of that is huge, and that people, society in general, and more. I mean, you get discriminated by men and women, but men especially have invested so much in their identity as a man. They have, fought tooth and nail to be perceived as strong, tough, unbreakable, and all the cliches that men should be, or that what society says men should be. They have spent their entire existence trying to fit in with these manly requirements. And when they come across someone who refuses to display those particular traits and to engage with those requirements, it's their very identity which is directly threatened. So the reaction is always going to be strong. A lot of them will just try and avoid you. A lot of them will just look away because, something in them knows that what they're doing and the way they're living their life isn't really who they are. But they have had, just to be able to survive, they've had to fit in this straight jacket of heteronormative behaviors, and so every time society is faced with someone who has decided that they will not fit into either being a man or a woman, or wearing the kind of clothes or colors that society deems decent and acceptable, then the reaction will always be a very strong one, because their very identity becomes threatened by my existence and the existence of people who do not want to fit in.
So how do you deal with that personally in practice, I suppose? What would be your advice in a way to other people who might be going through similar experiences, What would you say to them? And I suppose, you said you did spiritual healing as well, so what is the kind of thing that you tell people to guide them?
We all have different experiences, and we're all on a journey, because life is a journey. But I suppose engaging with that journey is the most important part. It's very tempting when with the level of low self-esteem, for instance, which I suffered from intensively, and which a lot of people do, straight or gay. But the LGBT scene has multiple reasons to feel even lower self-esteem, because of the way they've historically been treated, and the way that society is still perceiving them and expressing itself. We need to make peace with who we are. We need to make peace with our childhood, and we need to be strong and be brave, and face the pain, and be prepared to experience depression, and experience all sorts of other symptoms and situations, but really reconnecting with who we are through therapy, talking groups, changing our lifestyles, just exploring and experiencing, and yes, just really just trying to be as true to our essence as possible.
Because it's beautiful what you said earlier about not giving in, right? But so were you ever tempted to give in, or do you feel like you ever gave in? You never did.
I never gave in completely. I tried to fit in. I tried all the things that that are there and available, for gay men, for instance. But it never felt right. I was fortunate enough to have the clarity to know that actually this doesn't feel right, and if I'm not feeling satisfied with the way things are now, I have to change things, and so it meant that there were periods where I would do traditional drag, and there were periods where I would do traditional boy, and I would do traditional gay boy, and then traditional serious boy, but none of these things ever brought me joy. And the essence of life should be joy and a sense of fulfillment, and so through the arts, that was another way that you could explore and discover what is happening behind the scenes, and how to bring to the fore something much more in line with my essence.
So would you say in that sense that your art does it have a message, do you feel? Are you trying to convey a specific vision of life, or what are you trying to communicate?
There are things that I want to say. There may not be one specific message. In a way, having fought so much for the right to be myself, and having dismantled so many lies and false beliefs about myself, has kind of created a dynamic where I am myself, and I know that, but people outside who look at me also know that, and I think that's the most profound message that could be conveyed to anyone, is how to be strong and specific about who we are and the truth that we want to express, but also remaining sensitive and remaining vulnerable, and displaying emotions, not being so worried about what's right and what's wrong, but just being. And so to a large extent, I suppose my creative practice is now just an expression of who I am. I'm not particularly desperate to make people understand a thing or the other. I just want to inspire people to find a way to find themselves again, and to be themselves in the world.